Subscribe or they will haunt you.
Serious? What the creepiest, scariest thing you seen but no one believes you? Only my mom ever believed me about this. Unfortunately, she is no longer alive, so I cannot ask her for any more details than what I have been told while growing up. My dad just never wants to talk about what happened. I used to live in this rented house near an appliance store from birth up until I was 6 years old. I am 24 now and out of the military. If that tells you how long ago this was, since it was a small house and I was the younger sibling, and my dad worked nights, I ended up sleeping in my parents' room until we moved out. It should be noted that one side of my bed was against a wall and the other facing the doorway. I remember having this Cookie Monster plush that I was obsessed with and would never go to sleep without it. If my mom ever tucked me in without it, I would throw a tantrum until I had my best friend. Things started to change when I was about to turn 4 though. My mom would wake up and notice I would be sleeping without the plush and that it would be under my bed. Not thinking much of it, she would just put it back in my bed and let me continue sleeping. This kept going on for a couple of weeks until my mom finally decided to ask me about why Cookie Monster would always be under my bed when she would wake up. I remember saying something along the lines of, "He is my friend. He talks to me and likes to walk around at night," or something of that matter. From my perspective, I knew I was talking to Cookie Monster because I could see his eyes. You know how he has those big white eyes that stick out. He would talk to me at night and help me go back to sleep when I was scared. My mom played it off as my overactive child's imagination, but it slowly was about to get worse. Over the course of the next couple of months, I would have night terrors. No, not simple nightmares. I am talking about full-blown night terrors. So bad to the point I would stiffen up and do nothing but scream as my mom tried to rock me back to sleep. His went on for almost every single night. They were so scarring on younger me that to this day I remember what they were about. I would be laying in bed at night when my Cookie Monster plush would come to life, drag me out of my bed, and pull me under it to eat me. Shit. I never stopped getting these dreams until I was 14. That is how scarring they were. About a year from moving out of the house and into a better place, my mom would learn the truth behind the whole ordeal. She woke up to some noises one night and heard me out in the living room talking to Cookie Monster. Now you might expecting that I am going to say she saw me talking to the plush. But you are wrong. You might expect me to say that I was laying in my bed and only the plush was out in the other room. But you are wrong. But reality is much scarier than any fictional story. What she saw instead is much worse than any paranormal activity shit you could ever see in any movie theater. For instead of a possessed doll, she saw me standing there, talking to the dark. My mom instinctively turned on the light, and as soon as she did, 2 old guys went running out of the now wide open front door. The only thing I remember from that night was my mom holding on to me for dear life as my dad and the police rushed to the house. The thing that scares me to this day is not the fact that I was talking to 2 random strangers that night. What scares me to this day is that I was talking to these people for months without knowing it. I was talking to the people who were constantly breaking into my house every night, that they were breaking in for months without kidnapping me or stealing anything from us. What scares me to this day is that I still have no idea what they ever planned to do. When I was 3, we were picking up my grandparents for a Sunday drive. I was sitting in the back seat on the passenger side. My grandfather was sitting in front of me. Suddenly he keeled over, dead of a massive stroke, as they hustled my little sister and me out of the car and into my grandparents' store. I happened to look over my shoulder and plainly saw Grandpa walking down the street with 2 men. Both were dressed in suits, which made it all the more incongruous that Grandpa was wearing the same gray sweater and peaked hat he'd been wearing a moment before in the car. There was nothing particularly creepy about the experience, except that I wouldn't accept that Grandpa was dead because, after all, I'd just seen him walking down the street. Naturally, this didn't go over very well, but I loved my grandpa. I didn't want him to be dead, and I knew what I had seen. When our family doctor arrived to pronounce grandpa dead, my mother asked me if I would take his word for it. We had a very good, trusting relationship with our doctor, so I said that I would. The doctor assured me that my grandfather had in fact died, but he was the only grown-up who didn't treat me like I was crazy. He listened respectfully as I told him what I had seen, and he suggested that maybe the men in the suits were angels. This seemed reasonable. Problem solved. But to this day I can still see Grandpa walking down the street with those two men, and no matter what my parents tried to tell me, it wasn't just a guy who looked like Grandpa coincidentally wearing exactly the same clothes he'd been wearing in the car. It was him. I had a similar experience, not with death. Anyway, for years there was a picture of a family sitting on the table in my grandma's house. The picture would be taken down every now and then and a new portrait going up. It was a portrait of some extended cousins. I don't know their names. One day my mom and I were in a grocery store, and I spotted that family. I pointed them out to my mom, who had no clue who I was about. They weren't cousins. She had no idea who they were. I told her they were in a picture on grandma's table. She said there never was a picture on that table. Later, that same day we had to go to grandma's to drop something off. When we got there, I went to the table and the picture was gone. It was there at least a week prior. I remember that picture. When mom went to the bathroom, I asked grandma about the picture, and even she had no idea what I was talking about. To this day, this very day, this mystery still bugs me. Ghost story time. I was living with a few of my friends a year and a half ago, and we all pretty religious. At least two of us work in religion. We were talking about how we didn't believe in ghosts or demons, at least in the sense that we could and see them if they were real. We started talking about how if we saw one it would change our perspective entirely. I said out loud, if something is here I wish it would just show us. 2 nights later I sound asleep and have the most vivid, brutal nightmare I ever had. Long story short, I was in my childhood house. We were getting robbed, and the robber shot my father, only it was me. I was the robber. My father and I had a very strained relationship, and the detail of the shooting woke me up in tears. I mean, I was sobbing. I looked at the foot of my bed and saw a man sitting on his heels staring at me. It looked like he was 80 years old, but never hit puberty. That as best I can describe it. His face looked kind, but his eyes looked so wicked it struck terror into my soul. He almost looked curious, but morbidly so. He was wearing clothes that looked like he was a newspaper salesman from 1890 New York. I only saw him for a split second and he was gone. The wild thing is I got all of that detail in just a split second, like he wanted me to remember him. Here's the crazy part. So I was spooked to shit, right? I went into our living room and watched YouTube and some Twitch streams for a bit until I convinced myself I was just half asleep and still spooked. I lay back in bed, and the moment my head hits the pillow, my roommate sits straight up in bed still asleep, points at the foot of my bed and says, "My name." Who is that? I lost my goddamn mind. I literally drove home at 3 a.m. and told my parents through tears I wanted to stay home until summer. I stayed at home for a week or so and then went back. My roommate started having night terrors after that, but we moved soon after. I.e. never been so scared in all of my life. Edit. I.e. had question about my roommate's night terrors. The one I saw happen the first night I was back. Basically we both sound asleep and he wakes up screaming. I don't mean yelling, I mean screaming. It sounded like an animal in pain. For those of you who have been hunting before, he sounded like a deer screaming after being shot. I got down on the floor. He just slept on a mattress and tried to calm him down, but we locked eyes and he started to try to climb over me still screaming. He looked afraid. absolutely terrified. After 2 or 3 minutes he stopped all of a sudden, started mumbling and went back to sleep. I was holding his hands and our fingers were locked like when you wrestle, and I had bruises the next day because of how hard he squeezed. The next morning I asked him if he remembers waking up screaming, and he said no, but I had a crazy dream. You got down from your bed and started attacking me, but you were covered in this black sludge, like your face was melting off, but it was this tar-like goo that smelled like decay. After that, 2 of my other roommates and I got together and prayed in our room. Nothing quite as bad happened after that. Some other less entertaining stuff happened, like couches being stripped of their cushions and things spilling in the middle of the night. One time a bottle of wine just f***ing exploded out of nowhere and scared us to death. Thanks for the silver was my first. Edit number 2. To be clear, I am a seminary student and I work in ministry for high school students. Not exactly a youth pastor, but sort of. I don't believe in spiritual healings or anything like that. I'm much more naturalistic about my beliefs. But these things really happened. Whether it was a hallucination or genuine spiritual thing, I have no idea. I don't like to think about it. Alright, so this one comes with a little backstory. Gonna be sort long, so strap in. Mobbly blah blah. I worked at a YMCA summer camp in Colorado. Cool spot. Really secluded. No cell service or Wi-Fi. It backed up to some NFS land that we had permits to use. I digress. Before this was a summer camp for kids. It was a secluded farm ranch owned by this family, the Bandors, who had been living on it and running it for decades. Time frame we are talking about is circa 1890. I don't remember exactly. Anyway, this family would have these elaborate parties and other people from Denver and Boulder and the like would come and dance and get shit-faced. They had a dance hall on the property, and this is where they would host parties. Side note, the original building is still on property and in use for staff and campers. So one of the older boys in the Bandor family took a liking to a certain Denver girl named Mary Jenkins. She frequently visited during the dance parties and ended up getting engaged to the Bandor boy. At one point they were having a little pre-wedding celebration, and Mary was up visiting them for a month-long period. One day during her visit, Mary and her husband-to-be were taking some wedding photos about a half-mile from camp proper. The dance hall area there is this awesome canyon with walls maybe 400 feet high. On one particular wall there is this really cool land bridge arch in the rock. So they were up on this rock bridge thing, and suddenly Mary Jenkins falls off and plummets to the bottom of the wall. She wasn't dead upon impact, but was horribly mangled. Her groom-to-be and some others who were there carried her body back to the ranch house, now camp office, where she died. Now, there is some speculation whether or not Mary actually fell off of the arch. Some people think that she was pushed off the rock by her fiancé. She had a large dowry, and I believe back in the day, that was an official agreement that was guaranteed money. So after she died, the dowry was given to the Bandor boy, and he married one of Mary Jenkins' best friends like a couple months later. So speculative death with money and backstabbing. Perfect concoction for paranormal activity. Fast forward to modern day YMCA camp. I have had 3 very specific encounters with the spirit that I and everyone else at camp believe is Mary Jenkins. I know others who have had encounters as well, but I will only tell you guys about mine, otherwise I'll be typing all night. Encounter 1. I and my girlfriend at the time were both working at camp. It was the weekend, so no one was there, but since we lived there at the time, we decided to go on the hike and come back to relax. We came back to camp and it is empty. No cars. Nothing. Even our director, who lives there year-round, was gone. Taking advantage of our privacy, we decided to jump in the shower together in an empty cabin. At one point during our shower there was a very distinct knock on the door of the bathroom. 3 or 4 knocks. We both look at each other confused, knowing we were the only ones there. Maybe someone came back. We figured it was probably our boss or something. I step out with a towel and open the door. No one. Confused and now a little creeped out middle of the woods, I hop back in the shower, finishing up, and there was another fucking knock on the door. At this point I am shitting my pants. Was creeped out the rest of the night, but nothing else happened. Encounter 2. I was off work and I was watching a movie in my personal cabin. My personal cabin just so happened to be the original home of the Bandor family. It was busted and rickety, but hey, it was standing. Had a bed and a fridge. One night I went to sleep watching a movie. My computer was probably 1/2 battery life. Hopefully just enough to finish the movie. If not, my computer would go into sleep mode and essentially shut down. I fell asleep anyway, so whatever. At about 3 a.m. my computer roars to life. The movie I had put in earlier in the night starts playing on its own from the beginning. This is usually something that needs to be manually activated by clicking or prompting a program, etc. Additionally, my computer was at full battery. Some weird electronic thing going on. I shut that shit down and had a very uneasy sleep. Encounter 3 was in the dining hall. The old dance hall was converted into the mess hall with kitchen, etc. I was standing in the kitchen with a coworker cleaning up from breakfast. All of a sudden, our dishwasher started a cycle on its own. Just started running. Creepy as f. My coworker noticed it too and was freaked as well. Additionally, there are lights on in cabins at night when no one has been in them, and random doors to cabins open or locked. Just super weird shit. I don't think Mary Jenkins is a bad ghost. She doesn't want to hurt anyone. She just wants you to know that she is there. But yeah, it's definitely haunted. I also didn't believe in paranormal before working there. I also have a legit newspaper article about her death in the canyon from 1890. I will try to post a pic of it. This one happened to me and my friend, but no one ever believes us. It was 2 summers ago, about 10 p.m. We were riding her family side-by-side razor buggy, known by many different names, around our neighborhood. It was common to see people riding these around. We were coming down a long street that met up with a busier and more main road. As we got close to the road, where approaching cars would be visible, I saw a black truck. I didn't say anything as it was not out of the ordinary, but my brain recognized it. We got to the stop sign maybe 5 seconds later and the truck was nowhere to be found. So in my brain I think, oh, I must have just imagined that, until my friend turns to me and said, "You saw that black truck too, right?" Chills went down my spine. We looked down both ways of the long road. No sign of the truck or any car in sight. It was so weird. It was like the truck vanished out of thin air. I still think about that a lot and how creepy it was. Anyone got any explanations for this?